Welcome to this next show. We are here today with Nathan Lawrence. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was 23 years old. And before that, he had been hospitalized for a few weeks with viral meningitis, and it nearly killed him. And so this is an excellent story of his perspective on living with type 1 diabetes and learning how to move into a different perception. Perception, he says, is everything. And I would like to explore that with him today. So Nathan, thank you. Thank you for writing in. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So let's just jump in. Okay, so
Sure.
you didn't know you had type 1 diabetes.
No.
And you fell ill, and then you went to the hospital.
Yeah. So I had been feeling, ill for probably a week to maybe 2 weeks prior to the going to the hospital with the meningitis. And it just seemed to progressively get worse. I lost interest in food and eating and all that kind of stuff. And then I had started getting the symptoms of meningitis without knowing it. So I got, a really stiff neck, and I kind of played it off and thought, maybe I just slept on it wrong. But it was more stiff than you would get from sleeping sleeping in a twisted up sort of way.
Yeah. Right.
And I wasn't living at home at the time, and I called my mom just to tell her, and she's like, maybe just rest it out for a couple of days. And she called me back about 10 minutes after that conversation ended, and it was like, nope, I just read it in my health guide. I'm taking you to the hospital. So she took me down to VGH, and they did a spinal tap and among other tests. And that's how they found out that I had meningitis. It was a white blood cell count in my spinal fluid.
Wow. Did you have a rash or anything that went with it, or was that?
Yeah, I did actually on the back of my head.
Oh.
And I thought it was they almost felt like bites or spider bites. And so I thought maybe I got bit by something as well. And that ended up being the rash from the spinal and brain fluid infection. And then the stiff neck was part of the symptom. And it's funny because VGH diagnosed me with meningitis, filled me full of Gravol and painkillers, and sent me home.
Sent you home with meningitis?
They sent me home with meningitis.
But that can kill you.
Yes. Yeah. I guess they didn't have the capacity to house me or something. And they thought, maybe I'll be okay if just pumping me full of that stuff and sending me home with a strong prescription for painkillers. And I woke up, I went home, I probably slept for about 4 hours, and I woke up feeling way worse than I did when I originally went into the hospital. So then I went back to Richmond General at that point, because my parents were living in Richmond.
Right.
And they kept me for about 2.5 weeks after that.
So what was so the one hospital sent you home, the other hospital gave you, took you in. Did they say why they took you in rather than, following the lead of the previous hospital?
Not to my recollection. I gather that it was a serious enough illness that I shouldn't have been sent home in the first place, but they didn't specifically say why they kept me. They just said, we're keeping you.
Because you had meningitis.
Yeah. And at that point I was fine with that. That was the best place to be.
Well, yeah, of course. Right. Like you were safe and happy and okay. Well, and so then 2.5 weeks with that, you went home, you recovered, and then what happened?
Yeah. So the recovery process was hard. The spinal tap, to regenerate the amount of spinal fluid that they take out of you, can take upwards of 6 months. And that being with that regenerating, you can't stand up for more than a couple minutes at a time without getting dizzy, sitting up as well. So you're basically I was bedridden for almost a month once I got home.
I didn't know that about spinal tap, Nathan. I didn't know.
Yeah, they are absolutely brutal. I'm glad I did it because that's how they found out what was going on. But yeah, they're quite the thing to recover from.
Wow.
And so I
lived at your parents' house for a while, hey?
I moved back in with them for a year after all that, just till I got myself back on my feet because I wasn't able to work or do anything during that time. So yeah, I just had to, do my recovery and work on that stuff and get myself back to a place where I could get back out on my own again.
And then, so a month goes by, you are able to stand for longer intervals.
Yeah. And then
what happened?
Then I started getting some of the symptoms of diabetes. So, like unquenchable thirst is a big one. So you're just, no matter how much you drink, you just drink, and then you pee it all out immediately. and then you get thirsty again. So like the most vivid night that I remember, I think I woke up probably 17 times to go to the washroom. And my mom had heard me get up. It was, every 20 minutes or every half hour. And in between those times too, I'm thirsty because I've now gone pee so many times, and I'm running downstairs to get water or juice or whatever I could get. I didn't know I was diabetic, so I was drinking whatever was there. And so my mom's like, that's not very normal either. You should probably go get that checked out. So sure enough, I went for I went for blood tests, and I don't think I had even made it home from the blood test, and my doctor was calling me saying, "You have diabetes. Go to Richmond General immediately. They know you're coming." So
wow.
It was like, it was the fastest blood work results I'd ever seen. First of all, it was like within 2 hours of doing the blood test, and then the doctor called me. So next thing you know, I'm driving to Richmond General, and they take me in, and I stayed there for 4 days while they got my blood sugars normalized and came up with a treatment plan and how to teach me how to use my insulin and check my blood sugars and do all that fun stuff as well.
Were you, so what were the other symptoms other than unquenchable thirst?
That and the frequent urination. Those were the two biggest ones. Those are the only ones I really had, but they're also like two of the biggest ones that you can have. So those were the signals that, you need to go get that checked out. I had lost so much weight just due to the meningitis itself that it wouldn't have been that noticeable if I had that much more weight loss from the diabetes.
Right. And then if you were tired, it wasn't registering either.
Yeah. I'd been tired for, a month and a half before that. So I was probably having more energy than I had in the last month and a half. So to me, those sort of things felt more normal. When
you learned about type 1 diabetes, what did they tell you? They said, okay, so it's your immune system, it basically destroys the cells in the pancreas, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't remember them getting as in depth about it like that. I mean, it all happened really fast. So, and I kind of just took it in stride. So next thing you know, I'm diabetic. Okay. I'm going to the hospital. You're diabetic. This is how you're going to treat it. And I just sort of accepted it at that. I just wanted to feel better. Felt so bad for quite a while that, I was willing to do whatever I had to do just to get myself feeling better again. So if that's what I had to do to make myself feel better and get back on track, then that's what I was going to do. It didn't, looking back at it, I don't think because of the previous meningitis and all that stuff, I don't think it had as big of an impact on me as it probably would have if it had just been diabetes.
like 5% or whatever of people have it.
Yes. And then also it's quite rare to develop type 1 diabetes at, later in life like that. It's, that's usually early onset or juvenile diabetes is what they refer to it as. And it's usually something that comes about in your early years of life, as opposed to going full type 1 at 23 years of age.
Yeah, they say like it says under 20 is usually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so what did they say? Did you have it and not know it? Or like, what was the combination for you, I wonder?
Yeah, that's what I've never had a straight answer on that. And it's, they say, well, maybe the diabetes caused the meningitis, but then on the other hand, maybe the meningitis caused the diabetes. So it's the chicken and the egg theory almost. They don't know which one came first, but one of them was there and one was probably directly related to the other, and in which order, that's the big question.
23 years old, you're experiencing life, you're living, you're just enjoying your life and your freedom. And type 1 is pretty limiting.
It can be, yes. It definitely can be. There's a lot of things that you have to watch out for, and a lot of things you just can't do. But I tried to not pigeonhole myself and tell myself that I can't do all these things. I grew up playing a lot of basketball. Mm-hmm. So even physical activity with type 1 diabetes, it changes because you have to be aware of your blood sugar levels while you're playing. So, I would go from playing and going to sit on the sideline to check my blood sugar and make sure that I'm not running low and I'm not going to pass out on the court in the middle of a game or anything like that. But I mean, the more you go through it and the more times you experience it, you find ways to make it work for you. And I really did not want to be just handcuffed to say I couldn't do certain things or limit myself from the things that I wanted to do just because of it. And, I just tried to find ways to make it work for me.
When you were given when they walked you through what diabetes was, how you handle it, how you live with it, did they list limitations that you would have?
I don't recall a list. I remember them saying to avoid things like drinking, which is alcohol turns to sugar in your blood, immediately after drinking it. So that can spike your blood sugars pretty good. And so that was a big one. And they said that's usually the hardest one for people your age is the partying and the drinking, because at that age, that's what a lot of people are doing with their free time.
Absolutely. And so then what would the effect be? So if you drank, then what is the effect of the sugar in your bloodstream immediately?
Well, there's two different things with diabetes. So you have your lows, and those can be deadly, and you have your highs, which also can be deadly, but they're deadly over a long period of time, whereas a low can be deadly, within hours. So, if you go into a diabetic coma or a diabetic shock, that's usually due to low blood sugar. And that's when your body doesn't have enough sugar in its system to run your body. And it starts shutting down your abilities to do things. And my description of that is when you go into a low, it's sort of like being blackout drunk. If you're in an extreme low, it's you lose control of your motor skills. Your mind doesn't work the same way. You will do things and not even know you're doing them. Whereas highs, and this is how people end up losing limbs or losing their eyesight, damaging their liver, their kidneys, and all those kind of things, is prolonged high blood sugar over time. It can make you lose feeling in all your extremities, pop blood vessels in your eyes, and make you lose you basically get sugar crystals in your eyes and it makes you lose your eyesight.
Okay.
And so just having that balance is the best and main thing that you can do for yourself that will give you the best chance of living a longer, healthy life.
Like, it seemed like such a heavy thing. If you're 16, if you're 15, if you're 14, you're 19,
Yeah.
you're 23, and you have this to think about. You know, you're thinking about your future. You're thinking about, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? How are you going to present yourself to this world and interact with it? And then you also have this in the background that is a 24/7. You're never going to get away from this.
No.
And that must
never.
Was that an adjustment for you?
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, there's no way you could say that it wouldn't be wouldn't be a huge, like, I mean, it's life changing. It's,
Yeah.
you have to change a whole lot of how you used to do things to now take into account and manage an illness that will never go away and is basically, depending on how you handle it, can be your end. You know, if you that's why you see people in the States that don't have access to healthcare and affordable prescriptions. Diabetes largely goes untreated in the States. And my insulin, even with coverage, I have right now, just based on, I have a $2,000 deductible. So I have to pay $2,000 in prescription costs before they will cover anything of my prescription. So $2,000 a year guaranteed I'm spending on my insulin. If I buy a 2 or 3 month supply, it costs me $800. Yeah. And I tend to buy it at 3 months at a time. So I don't have to worry about it. I have it in my fridge. It's there when I need it and I have it on hand, as opposed to when I was younger, because it was expensive. I would buy, 1 month at a time or even 2 weeks at a time. And I was going to the pharmacy every 2 weeks or a month and getting new insulin. But yeah, it's not cheap. It's
Which is why we're having this conversation today, because you do have a different perspective. When I did speak to you and we met, we were talking about it, and you really seem to have this idea that it doesn't limit you. And there's so many people that they feel limited by it. And maybe it's because they're younger, like you talked about, but you really have something to share here. And not only does it change your life physically, and there's limitations, and perspective is everything. So some people may not be, as we're going to discuss in a few minutes, your perspective might not have that ability. So they have all of that behind them. And then they have the cost of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so it's $2,000, you have a $2,000 deductible, but then how much is it per year? So
it's probably
$2,000 a year.
No, I calculated it's probably around $4,000 a year.
And this is just for the insulin?
Just for insulin, just what I need to live a normal day-to-day life. It's it seems crazy that for something that you would need to live normally, just like everybody else, they're going to charge you that much for it. And if you can't afford it, then you just don't have it. Yeah.
Like, this is not something that, you hear people talking about needs and wants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is essential. This is not like, it's even beyond a need, because you have to have it to live.
It's, I had this conversation with someone that was in charge of deductibles, and they're the ones that you talk to when you call in. But, I said, how do you guys figure that, I have to pay $4,000 a year just to have some medication that keeps me alive? And, I could understand there's people out there that do not take care of themselves by choice, and they become drains on the for lack of a better term, on the medical system, and they're in constant medical care and they're using tons of resources and all that kind of stuff. I can understand, not to say punishing someone like that, but I mean, to punish someone who, this person's going to have a larger deductible, or this one's going to have a smaller deductible, and what kind of factors play into that. So I was told that it's based on income, which is fine. If I make enough income to spend $4,000 on insulin, okay, but that's beside the point. I mean, it's something that I need just to live a normal life. So my question to them was, I've had zero issues with my diabetes since I've had it. I have not been hospitalized for anything diabetes related since then. I have good control over my blood sugars. I go to all my appointments. I follow up with all my specialists. Everything that needs to be done, I do. And, I just don't understand how it kind of feels like I'm being punished for being diabetic, even though I'm out there doing everything I need to do to make sure that I can, first of all, live a healthy and happy life. And second of all, not be a drain on our health system that, it's supposed to take care of us.
Right.
So,
and here's the thing, for you and in your life, you have a full-time job, you may have, the things that you need, but there are single parents out there who have children or one child with diabetes, and they might not be able to afford, what and so it's a big issue. I didn't realize, actually, Nathan, that this was an issue, and now that you bring it up, that's very new to me. I hadn't heard that before.
Insulin should be free for the people that need it.
Yes, because it's an emergency. It's literally essential. Right?
It's like drinking water every day. You need it.
Yes.
You need it. I can't, if I decide to go for a day without taking my insulin, my quality of life diminishes, I would say 60 to 70% immediately.
I think that's an important point that you make here. This isn't something that if you miss, it's a gradual decline.
No.
It is. So what happens? So if you were to miss a day, what happens to you?
You get, so like I said, with the prolonged high blood sugar, you get all these other issues, but immediately there is still effects. You'll get, you'll feel lazy, lethargic, kind of hazy. You'll feel pressure in your eyeballs, all these kind of things. And those feelings do not go away until you get your blood sugar under control. And if you do not take your insulin, you will not get your blood sugar under control. So those things will just gradually get worse. And if you went day by day by day without doing that, it would just compound and compound and compound, and to a point where you'd end up, I'm sure, hospitalized with any other thing, because your immune system would basically shut down. You would be, because you're basically traumatizing your entire system by doing that.
Right. Right. And how have you, so, you don't want to lose, you bring things with you every day. Alex was, and I were, when we were talking, he was saying, he's got a backpack that he brings with him everywhere he goes. And, hopefully you never lose that backpack. It has everything you need in it. And that's essential for, and so when you began this journey of type 1 diabetes, eating and all of that, you have to count and calculate things.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's even a heavy load in and of itself.
Well, it means you can't sit down and just get into enjoying your meal. You got to see how much, how many carbs. It's carb counting is what they call it. And you're doing the amount of carbs that you're eating is going to affect how much insulin you take to break down those carbs or sugars in your system. and you have to be pretty on point to make sure that you either took, or that you don't take too much insulin, or that you didn't take too little insulin, because if you eat too much for the small amount of insulin that you take, then you're going to have your highs. And if you take too much insulin for the amount of food and you didn't calculate properly, then you're going to have your lows. And so you have to be.
So how do you ensure, and was it trial and error for you in the beginning, or were you just, I mean, it must create a sense of anxiety. I mean, come on, you nobody wants to feel sick. Nobody wants to feel, out of balance. So
No.
then that puts an extra anxiety on the situation, right before you start. And then eating is supposed to be enjoyable, but what's your process? You go to a restaurant, you sit down, what do you do? You go, I want artichoke, hot artichoke dip or whatever it is with cheese, all that. Now count that carbs. How do you count that?
Yeah, restaurant eating becomes hard because you don't know everything that's in it unless you ask them for a recipe or for them to tell you. I've done that a couple times and I didn't find it to be all that helpful. Trial and error
the restaurant wasn't helpful, or counting?
I mean, they would oblige, but I mean, it's kind of like pulling teeth. They're like, oh, why do you want to see that? And then you have to go into a whole explanation with them. So I just started by portion size is sort of more or less what I started basing mine off of. And that's actually it's been pretty helpful for me. If I'm going to eat a lot, I'll even overshoot a little bit. And I know that I have what I need with me to combat that if I did overshoot. Like I said, I've been very, very fortunate with my diabetes. There's a lot of people that don't have the same, intuitiveness or with themselves. I can feel my lows and I can feel my highs while they're happening, and sometimes just while they're on the cusp. And that's not something that everybody has. So if I was sleeping and my blood sugar went low, I wake up. Some people don't. They'll sleep through it, and that can be extremely dangerous. So I've sort of been able to just off feeling alone, and like I said, it's not something that everybody is fortunate enough to have. I'm very fortunate in that regard, that I've just off feeling I can sort of gauge how much I need to take or how much I need to eat to balance out the amount of insulin that I've taken.
Right, because and again, this is almost a revision of the conversation I had earlier in another interview, but I think this is important. So you go to bed at 10 o'clock at night and then you wake up at 7. So the body's doing whatever it's doing in the interim of while you're sleeping. So you can feel when the sugar goes low. What is the feeling for you? So for those people who have type 1 diabetes and they're young men and women and they're not yet able to wrap their mind around it, what do you do and help them begin to identify it themselves?
One of the biggest things for me is on a low, I will start to sweat a little bit. And it's not like a sweat from playing sports. It'll be, it'll start on the forehead and then it'll be on my arms. And any kind of sweat on my forehead or arms, if I'm not doing anything physical, I know exactly what's going on. I will check my blood sugar. And usually when I check it, when it's catch it in that early stage, my blood glucose level would be like a 2, which is low. So for blood glucose levels, they say they want you between 4 and 7 for healthy numbers. So that's usually the sweet spot. That's where you'd like to be. 5 is, 5.5 is considered perfect. And so 2 and lower, those are when you're starting to get into, danger territory. But I can almost set my clock to it. If I feel that that sweat on my forehead or my arms and I'm not playing sports, I'm usually at a 2 or right around there. And I know.
And how long does it take you to bring yourself back into balance?
I'll usually have at that point, I'd have like a juice box and a granola bar or something like that. And it'll take me, 5 minutes or so to get back to, it'll just slowly get better over those 5 minutes. But, 5 to 10 minutes and you're sort of back to normal. And then you'll, check your blood sugar again, maybe have, a little bit of protein as a snack, like some cheese or, something like that. And then just because the proteins take longer to break down, whereas the sugars and carbs, they'll spike you and then you can crash again and be right back in the same situation. So you want to spike with juice and, something like a granola bar and then sort of level out with something a little more, with a little more substance to it. And then it sort of then it'll sort of normalize out again. And then you'll be okay until the next time you're supposed to eat.
So would you, you're sleeping, you wake up in the middle of the night,
Yeah.
Do you just have something beside you on your nightstand, or is it like you got to get up, you get going, you go downstairs or wherever your kitchen is and rummage around?
Yeah, I usually have stuff in my room, just beside my bed, just in case. But if not, then I just go downstairs to the kitchen. And I used to have, when I was a little bit younger, I used to be fine. I'd wake up and go to the kitchen, have my snack, and go right back to bed and fall asleep immediately. But now, as I'm starting to get older,
we're older, Nathan. We don't go back to sleep very well.
No, we don't. I had it just the other night, and I was dead tired, and I was like, I need to go to sleep because I'm working tomorrow morning. And I woke up at 1:30 and had to have some juice and a snack, and I didn't fall back asleep till 3 o'clock. So it goes from 10 minutes to an hour and a half before falling back asleep.
Does this happen often to you?
No, not very often. It did more when I was younger and I was learning how to calculate and how to do all that stuff. Now I've sort of been in a routine. Routine is key as well for diabetics.
Routine is key. Yeah.
Yes. You need to eat around the same times every day. Make sure you take your shots around the same time every day. Too much variance can really throw it off. So travel can be a little difficult, but I mean, I went to Japan a couple years ago, and that was my first real out of North America trip. And so it's a 17-hour time difference, I believe. They're 17 hours ahead.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that was an adjustment. But even with that, I still had very, very few issues, but it can throw you off for a couple of days until you sort of get in your routine on that side of the world.
Well, and you're taking things with you. So when you have your backpack, you've got you have a juice box and granola bar and all of that. Now let's talk about, so that's a low. Mm-hmm. Now, what about the high?
The high, you have to sort of, you have to see how high you are, first of all. And then you have to counteract that with insulin. So, and then a little bit of physical activity sometimes, but also physical activity can also work against you if your blood sugar is high enough.
So what is a high blood sugar then?
Well, anything over 7 is considered high, but I would say, if you're getting 10 and above, you're high, and you need to bring that back down. So, I mean, when I was learning to deal with it all, I had, it was one of my, I don't know, it's probably a few months into, calculations were off, and I was using a different kind of insulin than I'm using now as well. That was it was a mix of a long acting and a short acting. So the short acting kicks in about 15 to 20 minutes. And then the long acting kicks in about 2 hours later. And it's supposed to take you from meal to meal. And, I had miscalculated, I guess, and my blood sugar was through the roof and I could feel it. So I tested myself, and my blood sugar was so high that my meter didn't even give me a number. It just said high.
No. Oh no.
And,
Right.
and then I'm like, oh,
That's a bad calculation, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. And no one had told me about that particular situation when I was going through all of this. So I see high and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, maybe I should go do some physical activity because that breaks down sugars because your body's using it to give yourself energy to do whatever you're doing. And so I started going, I went for a jog and I was doing some sprints outside the house and stuff. And I didn't know this, but if your blood sugar is high, physical activity can actually release more sugar into your bloodstream and make your blood sugar go higher.
Oh no. So then what happened?
So then I just had to take more insulin. The insulin that I was on was not a kind that was, you were supposed to, they tell you different things about it, but the one that I was on was, you do your one injection before your meal and that should be enough. You're not supposed to top up. You're not supposed to take any extra shots or anything like that. So that's why I did the physical activity as opposed to taking an extra shot. But at that point, I had no choice after that, after my blood sugar was that high. And what I had been doing was counterproductive to what I was trying to achieve.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So then I had to take an extra shot and it did come down, but it took several hours.
Wow.
It took, it was about 3 hours of me trying to figure that out. And that was, I was fairly new to it at that point too. So it was a learning experience. And the other thing too is there's a lot of emphasis on numbers and balances and all of this stuff, but nobody's perfect and you have to do what works for you. So,
right.
If you need to, if sometimes I switched to a newer style of insulin now, which gives me a whole lot more freedom, to eat things and to go and do my own schedules and do those kind of things. It gives me way more freedom for those kind of things. But yeah, you just kind of have to find your sweet spot and find what works for you. Every diabetic responds differently to treatment. So there's no clear cut path to this is going to work for absolutely everybody.
Right. That's the difficult thing. So when you wrote in, you said, if you sat there feeling sorry for yourself, then your battle was already lost.
Exactly, because then I'm letting it beat me before I even have a chance to get started with it. I had just survived meningitis. They're telling me I have diabetes, and the only thing that I have to do to make sure that I live a healthy life, a long healthy life, or as long as possible, is to eat healthy and exercise. I mean, there's way worse things in the world I could have got.
Wow.
And that was my outlook from the very start. And I mean, even in the hospital, I remember too, some of the doctors just being like, "Oh, you have a very good outlook on this, and I think you'll probably be okay." And if you continue that outlook and that approach, then you're going to have, you'll have very few problems adjusting.
How did you maintain that perception and outlook when there's a lot of stigma around type 1 diabetes and diabetes in general?
Well, I knew very little about it before I was diabetic. And so I never really paid attention to the stigma. I'd always heard, people make diabetic jokes like, "Oh, if I eat this chocolate bar, I'm going to get it, I'm going to become a type 1 diabetic. Or I'm going to become diabetic." Like to me, it was more people's ignorance or lack of understanding than an actual stigma. And then my other approach to that too is I'm the one that has to live with it, not anybody else. So I could really care less about what anybody thinks about it.
Right. And, but then fast forward that to when you're in a restaurant and you need to, check your blood sugar. Some people are not comfortable. They feel exposed. They feel different when they're, making that assessment.
Yeah, that's fair. Everybody's got, their levels of comfort. I've never felt like I've ever had anything to hide. I am I will check my blood sugar anywhere in front of anybody. I would take my shot anywhere in front of anybody. It's just, I have to do what I have to do. If they have a problem with it, that's their problem. Not,
right. Because you're basically saying your perception is I'm not going to be defined.
Exactly.
And so then you are going to continue to do what you've always done in the same group of people, doing the same thing, not stopping, going for dinner, going to parties and those kinds of things. Now you'll take your precautions, but what you're essentially saying is
what I'm essentially, I am Nathan Lawrence. I am not Nathan Lawrence, the diabetic.
Right.
The diabetes comes with me. Yes, it's there, but that doesn't define me in any shape or form. It's something that I live with, and it's something that I deal with, but I am still me, and I can do all the things I've ever wanted to do, and I will do all the things I've ever wanted to do. And that's not gonna stop me.
I am Nathan Lawrence. I love that. That's really important. I think that's really important because I've talked to people who are still struggling with that. It does feel confining. It feels like it is a huge limitation. And I use the word heavy and weighty and all those because that is people's stories.
Yeah.
So encourage someone who's listening and say, okay, how can they begin to reshape and to gain perspective if they find themselves in the situation where they're feeling very defined and limited? What are you going to say to them?
That's a good one.
I know, right? But you can't do this, Nathan, without a call to action. Come on.
No, absolutely. I mean, for me, I said I've been very, very fortunate and very blessed this stuff comes natural to me. I've never felt ashamed about, things that I've had going on in my life. I own them, and I just I continued doing what I need to do and what I want to do. It's always just been the way I've carried myself through life. I would say one of the biggest things, if you're comfortable in the way that you handle your diabetes, then you should not worry about the way anybody else perceives you in your handling of diabetes. It's not theirs to live with, it's yours to live with. And however you have to live with it is how you live with it. It shouldn't be defined by someone who doesn't understand it or doesn't have it and doesn't understand what it's like to live with it. It's,
it doesn't affect your worthiness. It doesn't affect,
no,
any of that.
Nothing. It's, what are you going to put it on your resume when you're going for a job that you're a diabetic? No, you let the people that you work with know that you are diabetic. So if there was ever a situation, they're aware and can help you if you need the help. But you don't say on your resume, things about myself, diabetic, and it limits me. No, because the only thing that limits you is the limitations you put on yourself. If you say that you can't do something, then you probably won't do it. But if you think that, yes, I can do this, then, the possibilities are endless. And failing one time or thinking you failed one time doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means you didn't succeed that time, and you can keep trying. And as long as you keep trying and keep putting yourself out there, the things that you need to happen will happen.
Wow. I like that. That's, and that's sort of the encouragement that someone would say to somebody, but it's so, when it comes from you who shares, there's a commonality there, that carries a lot more weight to it than someone like myself saying it, who doesn't have that as a life experience.
Yeah. And I mean, just the fact that there's people out there that are willing to learn about it and understand it. I mean, that should tell you right there that, it's a small percentage of the world that's going to judge you for being diabetic.
Well, and I think if people are judging people for whatever the reason, it doesn't matter,
Yeah,
diabetes or whatever, um, you might want to reevaluate who you have in your life.
that is 100% true. That is 100% true. If you have those kind of negative things in your life, then you will carry them forward. That is very, very true. I grew up in East Vancouver, in one of the, rougher neighborhoods in the city. Went to it was labeled as the worst or roughest school in Vancouver while I was going there. There were tons of negative stuff in my life. And yeah, I carried some of that with me out of high school as well. And it took me a whole long time to figure out how to separate myself from it and distance myself from it. I mean, that's part of how I've come to the views and way I carry myself now, is just that I realized that at a young age, if you carry negative things with you, they'll always be with you, and you'll carry that negative point of view through many different facets of your life.
So then let's encourage people right now. What is one step? So you say you came out of high school, you had negative experiences, and you began to distance yourself from that. Can you give the listeners a tip on the first step in making that happen? What did you do, if you can remember?
I think the biggest thing that changed that for me was just realizing that you get out of life whatever you want out of it. If you're content with staying in the same situation that you've always been in, then things won't change. If you look at the things you want out of life, I still don't know what I want out of life. I'm 35. I don't think, I've never had a clear view of a dream job or, a dream scenario for myself. I've sort of just gone with the flow of life and learn the things that I learn along the way and learn how to implement them into my life so I can be happy. But just being able to recognize those negativities and to get them, to learn how to move on from them is something I think a lot of people struggle with.
Right. And so would you say that acknowledging them or bringing them into verbalizing them was the beginning for you?
Yes, there would be, the people that I was hanging out with, the things that was happening around me, wasn't for me. It's what I grew up with, so it felt somewhat normal. But it wasn't what I wanted my life to be. And once I realized that, then everything else sort of just started to fall into place.
So at an early age, you moved away from things that would define you, which is why, I always believe that the past sets us up for, the future and how we perceive things. And so this naturally flows into what you're saying. Perception is everything. And so if you believe what you just said, then there's no reason why you would allow something like a type 1 diabetes, a very rare thing, to set you back, hold you down, stop you from living your best life or becoming into the, magnificent human that you are today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But it's a shame that we can't do a video, but I think when we do that, Nathan, people who see you, because we got to talk about other stuff too. This is exciting.
Absolutely.
But when people get to view you, they will see what I saw. When I met you, I was like, wow, that guy is a rock star. And I came home and I said to Dave, oh my gosh, this guy is really superb. And there's something, and it's not about anything, Nathan, it's just about what you just said. It follows you. And so the point of this conversation is all about perspective. It's all about you making a choice that says, you know what? This sucks. I didn't ask for this,
Yeah.
And I'm asking the question, why? Why me? Why me? But then if you move to a different perspective, it's, well, why not me? And
Yeah.
and why not me? Okay. So if it's why not me, then what can I do to help people who maybe aren't where I'm at and want to be where I'm at? So how can I move people and encourage them to move, towards a position of, okay, why not me? That's a platform. I can share
Yeah.
my story. And this is the power of this show. This is why I like doing what I'm doing. Because Nathan, when you tell your story, it
Yeah.
isn't one dimensional. You're not just sharing, oh, okay, so I have type 1 diabetes. All of a sudden, you begin to share the context of why you have perspective. And all
Hmm.
of a sudden, you're now sharing about, okay, so I went to a really, one of the most challenging schools in Vancouver, and I
Yeah.
lived to tell about it. And
Yeah.
I had negativity, and I know what that feels like. And I just needed to distance myself. I needed to separate myself. Here's how I did it. Here's why I did it. That's beautiful. You've made something from discomfort, and you've made something from the feeling of negativity, and
Hmm.
that translates into every aspect of your life, including something as life-changing as this health experience. And I would say that you probably wouldn't define it as a illness, would you?
No, I mean, when you think about it, it is one.
It is, but
And
you wouldn't
it's
define it that way, not after I've heard you.
no, I wouldn't. And I don't like to think of myself as ill or carrying an illness. I know what I have, and I know it's going to be there forever. But yeah, I don't
Yeah,
carry
but you're
myself
not,
with,
like, it's not an illness. It's not something that, I mean, it has the potential to alter your state and alter your
yeah,
life, but
yes.
it isn't something, you know, like you said, if I just have to eat healthy and exercise,
Yeah.
then I'm doing well.
Yeah. If that's the, if that's the treatment for it, and that's what I came out with, that's,
Yeah.
that's pretty doable.
How do you approach, Valentine's Day, any kind of holiday that's got all the sugar caked into it, and alcohol too? Can we talk about that briefly?
Yeah, sure. Well, I don't drink. I chose to stop drinking even just before my diabetes and all that stuff. My father passed away at the same age I am now. He was 35 years old. He had kidney failure, and he liked to party. He liked to drink. I think that was one of the things. And even after his diagnosis with the kidney failure, I believe, from what I know of the story, because I was very young, was that he still found it hard to not drink with all that going on. His dad was much of the same, passed away at, I believe, 50 years old, was a heavy drinker. And I sort of wanted to end that trend. So I also don't like drinking. I don't care for the taste of it. And I don't like being inebriated to the point where I feel like I can't control myself. So all those things played factors into that, and that probably made some of my transition a lot easier too, because I wasn't out all night drinking and partying at that age. I was out all night for sure, but I wasn't drinking and doing all that stuff.
Right. And so you were able to go and be with your friends and celebrate and have a great time. What would you
Yeah.
do? So if they were all drinking, what were you doing? What were you drinking?
Well, I would just have water, or I'd carry a juice with me, and you're human and you only live once, so don't cut yourself off from the entire world. But moderation is key in everything.
I love that.
For
Yes, it is.
for everybody.
Yes, it is.
And I'm not a saint. I do eat sugar sometimes when I
Oh,
shouldn't.
come on,
And
Nathan. You are a saint. Close to it, at least.
Yeah, I try to. And I do eat some stuff on special occasions. I'll have a small piece of cake or something like that. And also, I am the only diabetic in my entire family, so when I go to a family party, you know, people are aware of it, but there's still tons of, you know, eating and cakes, and everyone else is drinking and doing all that stuff. So, you know, I just, limitations. I'll have a small piece. I'll have a couple bites, and that's all I really need to get through it.
I have a question about that. So
Sure.
I thought that type 1 was a genetic thing.
Yes.
So you said no one in your family has it.
I have one, well, not in my family here. I have one cousin on my dad's side of the family who has it, and that's it. That is my only connection to diabetes.
Wow. How
other
amazing.
than myself.
Wow. Because a lot of times it's like a grandparent or, something like that, where there's a very clear line where people can trace it. That's interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so to wrap this up, what would you say? What would you say? Someone's just diagnosed, or they're in their 20s and they're feeling sad. They are feeling it, and they maybe do not have the perspective you have. How can you lift them up, and how can you change the arc of their story?
Well, their story is always going to be their story. It's how they carry themselves through it. So I would say, you know, if you want good things to come out of life, then you have to go and get them. Good things don't generally just happen for no reason. You have to, you know, put the good energy out, and usually that good energy will get returned to you in some shape or form. You may have to do it for years before it comes, and you just have to stick with it. But if you just own what you have, and you know that it's yours to deal with and it's not anybody else's, and all you have to do is find your sweet spot. Once you find your sweet spot, you will things will work out the way you need it to work out. Without, it's
I'm just sitting here grinning. I feel inspired by you, and I'm just sitting here smiling. I'm just like, what a great encouragement.
Like, I don't know if maybe it sounds too simple, that just put out positive energy, but I mean, that's, out of all the things I've ever tried in my life, carrying myself in a positive manner has done more good for me than anything else I've ever tried. So
would you say that it begins with the mind? And when the mind says, this is limiting, or this sucks, or I'm this, I'm that, you would start by changing that narrative in your mind?
Absolutely. Saying you can't is the worst possible thing you could ever say to yourself.
Or I won't, or I'll never be able to.
Yeah, because as soon as you say that, you've just done that for yourself.
You've just limited yourself.
Yeah. And if, you can't be scared to fail. Failing doesn't mean you're a failure. If it means you didn't succeed that time, and you just keep trying. And the more times you try, the more likely you are to figure out how to get it done.
Well, and failing also leads us to a new perspective. It's when we keep going at the same perspective, and keep failing, and it's asking us, okay, try another vantage point. Can you move just a little bit and see it from just a different perspective? Maybe that perspective is changing the mindset around if you're partying and you're saying, okay, well, I'm here, everyone's drinking, I'm missing out. A perspective change could be, you know what I get to do? I get to have fun, to be the life of the party. And you know what? I get to help people get them home. I get to remember all the really crazy things that just happened. And remind them all the next day. No, but I would lean more towards service. Okay, so I'm the voice of reason. I can contribute in different ways that it's not a downside.
No, it's not. No, there's positives in everything. You just have to find them.
Oh, so good. This has been so good. I am really inspired by you, and yes, there is positives in everything, and it is one of the purposes for us all being here on this incredible planet is to begin to look for why and
Yes.
and how when life gives us something, how we can celebrate it in whatever form. There's always
Yeah.
joy. There's always joy, even in the
Yes.
middle of loss, even in the middle of messiness. There is joy, and
Yep.
and you're calling us to see it and feel it and move towards it. I really appreciate that, Nathan, and thank you so much for sharing your story. When you do that, you give people permission to share theirs, and I want to thank you for that. And perhaps you can come back on, and maybe we can have you on as a guest who can speak to some people who are struggling with type 1 or just struggling with their youth in general. It sounds like you have some wisdom.
I would love to do that. I was really looking forward to coming on here and talking about it. So thank you for having me as well.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.